even the left is hedging a bit on what he could do given COVID pandemic, the economy post-COVID, and the fact that when President Trump came into office, immigration was such a high priority for him. He got a lot done in his administration. And a President Biden would have a lot more distractions and other priorities. So we've seen that on day one, supposedly, a President Biden would reinstate DACA and repeal the travel restrictions that the Trump administration has put into place.
Let's look at those travel restrictions. We'll put DACA aside for the moment. There are different restrictions out there. Of course, your point about COVID is part of this, but the threat assessment of travel from certain areas, be it criminal or terrorist, from that perspective, what are some of those restrictions that if a Biden were to be certified and become president-elect, that we should look forward to or potentially look forward to?
Well, it would be very unwise. And if you look at the Biden campaign website, they still characterize this, grossly mischaracterize this as a Muslim ban. We're talking about 13 countries after the Trump administration reviewed over 200 countries. So a very small number of countries are on this list. And they're on this list because they either are state sponsors of terrorism, like Iran, they give sanctuary to terrorists, or they refuse to cooperate with normal international travel standards that all other countries comply with, which is reporting lost and stolen passports, receiving their nationals back, or providing criminal information when the U.S. government asks for it. So these countries have it in their control to get off of this list by cooperating, as over 200 other countries plus managed to do. So I think this is part bluster on the Biden campaign's part, because the fact remains that some of these countries, and even under the Biden administration, restricted entry from nationals of some of these countries. There's just no way around that.
What do you, or what would you assess as being one of the, for lack of a better term, more effective moves or changes that a President Biden would make that would be hard to undo and would have a greater effect on our immigration policy?
Well, he wants to undo the return to Mexico policy, which is written into law. Congress authorized that in 1996. What that would do is ring the bell for caravans to restart from Central America, smugglers to make a lot of money to get them or attempt to get them into the U.S., and the Border Patrol would be overrun. Now, I don't think Biden wants the optics of that. Nevertheless, he would have strong pressure from the left to end that practice and to reopen the gates for broad, vague asylum claims in very large volumes, which would return us to a catch and release position and, essentially an open border.
I mean, is this just an ideological belief? Because, Laura, when you examine this fairly, economic effects, resource management in this country, when you add people, you stress resources that exist, education resources, healthcare resources, water, sewer, electricity. I mean, let's be very granular but realistic about the actual effects of this. Wage suppression on the existing labor force. I guess I know it doesn't really baffle me, but it baffles why this would be an approach even by someone on the left.
It is baffling because it affects so many aspects of our lives, and many Americans get that, and you've named several of them, whether it's this class size in public education or healthcare costs. But the left has chosen that illegal immigration trumps everything else. And so they just turned a blind eye to, many of the negative repercussions from it in terms of dense population in areas, which, has environmental impacts. The left is, all about environmental causes, expenses, et cetera. But they have just chosen that racehorse, and they continue to ride it, and it is baffling. Immigration makes for strange bedfellows. Different contingents receive benefits through different ways, whether it's paying lower wages or what have you. So that's what makes this such a difficult issue, and that's one of the reasons Congress has not been able or willing to pass legislation major legislation since 1996. And given how evenly split this next Congress looks like it's going to be, I'm not optimistic that the next 2 years in Congress would produce any major legislation either for immigration.
It is an ineffective and dangerous, maybe dangerous lack of true application of law and the responsibilities of our legislators. They've failed. They've actually, just surrendered that responsibility or given it away in some form. But we'll continue to follow it.